Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 14.4 was released to the public a few days ago, and I wanted to go over the overall experience, battery life, features, and then your experience based off the YouTube community poll. And so this particular update has a lot in it, and Apple surprisingly released it only after 2 betas. I'll also talk about when to expect the next versions. So the first thing is some of the features, and the features in this particular update are fairly large, but not as big as some of the other updates, of course. So the visual changes, I'll go over briefly. I cover them at length in a different video from earlier in the week. But the first thing is it can scan smaller QR codes. It also has the option to classify Bluetooth. So where people were having that odd audio bug where it would drop the volume on them, you can now classify a device under your Bluetooth settings as different things such as car stereos or hearing aids or speakers so that it can better understand that. You also have HomePod mini support with handoff now in U1 equipped iPhones. So basically iPhone 11 and newer. So you can bring in a HomePod mini and hand off your music to the HomePod by getting closer. It will just jump from your iPhone to your HomePod just by bringing it close. So it's a pretty neat feature. You bring it back, you see it can come back and forth, and then it will activate and you can send your music to it. So I think that's a really nice feature, and that's probably the biggest visual change in it. There's also notifications if you have a different camera in here from, say, a different manufacturer. I guess that's more for people that are remanufacturing or updating the phone with new components after it's had a problem. And then also AirPods Max gains Siri when you say the word hey in front of it. So it gains that feature as well as a few others. Now there's also some bug fixes in this as well, such as issues with image artifacts and HDR photos with the 12 Pro. Typing that was delayed is probably the #1 bug fix. So when you're in messages, for example, your typing should no longer be delayed, as well as messages should show up in the correct language. And then there's other fixes for things such as the lock screen not working properly with accessibility. So a lot of different fixes in this, but I think the reason Apple released it only after 2 betas has to do with security vulnerability updates. And there are 2 major ones that are really a great reason for updating this. And the first one has to do with, or at least it says, a malicious application may be able to elevate privileges. And what that means is if there was an application installed, whether that be it was installed accidentally through the App Store, it could elevate privileges and gain access to your device. So that's been patched. So that's a major fix, as well as another one where a remote attacker may be able to cause arbitrary code execution. And so that's been patched as well. So again, if there was code on the phone that shouldn't be there, whether that be sent through an email or something else, they didn't state exactly how you would put that code there, but if someone did, they'd be able to run that code and then gain more access to your device where they normally wouldn't. So that has been patched. So those, I think, are the reasons Apple pushed this out with those security updates. The security updates are not something I covered in depth in the previous video. So those are great fixes. Now, as far as any other things, well, there isn't really anything exciting more than what I've already mentioned in previous videos with this update. However, I think we're going to see more with iOS 15, but this experience is better for most than, say, iOS 14.3 or other iOS 14 updates. So, for example, when you're using it, performance in general is very fast. Whether you're opening an application, it's nice and fast and smooth, and it doesn't really matter what device you're on. It seems to be plenty fast for most people. There's not many complaints with that, except for one thing I'll get to in a moment. But the overall experience is great. The camera is nice and fast, and the camera is nice and fast on all of the devices. There's still some fixes that need to be done, for example, I'll talk about in a moment. But in general, most people say this is much, much better, according to the comments, those 700 or so comments, that this is much better than previous versions. But my first issue I had is after a day or so of using it, and after it was installed on the release candidate, and I've tried rebooting it, and it does clear this issue. There is lag when you're closing an application sometimes. So you go into an application, close out of it, and it will sort of stutter like this when it closes, but a little bit less noticeable than that. So go in, swipe it out, and it would stutter. Now it's working okay, but sometimes it does that. And that is the major issue I've had with my phone. However, there's quite a few people saying the exact same thing. So there's a lag, and more lag when closing apps. Not really in anything else, just when closing apps. However, some people have had some weird bugs, such as disappearing widgets. So maybe it's the weather widget, something else, widgets could disappear. So if I go into Twitter, I'll show you an example. And this is a viewer Noah's phone, and he sent me this, and you'll see the widget's just missing. There should be a widget there, and it's just not there anymore. So there's that issue still remaining. Widgets seem to be a continual issue with this one, and hopefully they're fixed either in later iOS 14 updates or maybe iOS 15 at this point. Now, as far as other issues people are having, some people are saying that when you reboot the phone, there's a logo that flashes on the screen of the Apple logo. It goes away and then comes back up and then just stays steady. Now, that doesn't really affect any functionality of the phone whatsoever, but it's just something that's more annoying than anything else. So if you turn it off, turn it back on, and you boot the phone up, it would flash that logo, and it could be an annoyance. Other than that, it should work just fine. So other than the widgets disappearing and the occasional lag with, like I said, closing apps, most people seem to have a positive experience. However, there's some obscure things. So I like to cover these just to let you know what people are experiencing, but most people don't have these. So I'll go over these one by one. So some people are having charging issues still. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean with just MagSafe or anything else, but for some reason it doesn't start sometimes. So maybe you put the charger on, this one's not plugged in, but you put the charger on, whether it be MagSafe or something else, and it won't charge. It could be any Qi compatible charger, an Apple charger, and it just wouldn't charge. And some people are saying they're having issues. And so they'll have to restart and then get it to work again. And they're saying when they are experiencing this, their phone's getting quite warm. So there's something weird with the software having to do with charging. And so it's a good thing to know. And of course, once the next betas come out, we can report that in feedback. Also, some people are saying that their lag is not fixed in the keyboard. While it should be based on this update, and most people say it is, a few people are saying it is not. I think the major thing I hear, though, is Bluetooth connectivity seems to be an issue, whether that be AirPods or different earbuds that are third party. Sometimes Bluetooth is just not working properly, disconnecting, and sometimes volume is still not adjusting properly. And so that's something I've seen more and more. So Bluetooth and then Wi-Fi as well, with the Wi-Fi signal dropping. In fact, sometimes I notice, depending on where I am, I'll have to turn off Wi-Fi and have it jump over to, say, 5G or 4G, whatever's available. There we go. And then it will load a web page properly. Sometimes it just seems to have a hiccup switching between those. This was an issue earlier in the betas, and it still seems to be an issue now, and it's been an issue since the release of these phones. So there's something there. Hopefully it'll be fixed soon. But again, we'll report that in the feedback app once there's the next beta. Also, a few people are saying the screen stops responding to touch for some, so they'll be touching the screen, it won't work. And then also sometimes in the app library, the keyboard won't work at all for some people. So some people are having odd issues like that. Some people are still seeing CarPlay connectivity issues where it may disconnect even though it's plugged in. I know my brother had that issue a couple updates ago. And then finally, some random notification issues. So whether that be notifications for Instagram, you can see I have Instagram notifications there, and they're seemingly working okay for me, but not for everyone. So some people are still having that issue. I would suggest maybe uninstalling and then reinstalling Instagram. Now, of course, there's the green tint issue on the iPhone 12 series. We know about that. Apple has acknowledged they know about that, but we haven't seen a remedy for it yet. So that's still an issue. Now, with the iPad, it's been a pretty good experience. For me, I really haven't had any issues whatsoever. I did hear from some people that it was a little bit laggy from time to time as far as the 120 hertz Pro display. So when they were scrolling, it didn't seem like it was very fast and then it would pick up. It is variable, so that's possible. It could slow down and speed back up. It's supposed to do that, but it shouldn't lag. Other than that, it's been really good for me on the iPad. This update seems to fix most of the issues I've had, if not all, and so far, after using it for over a week and a half or so at this point, it's been really stable. Now, battery has been an issue for me on the iPad, though, as far as when it's in idle or just using it. So we'll talk about battery life on the iPad and then the iPhone. But battery life on the iPad, we'll go into the battery here, is really hit or miss. You can see it was last charged to 100% at 5:18 p.m. today, and it's 9:50 p.m. I have 70% battery life, and I used YouTube most of the time with 3 hours of screen on time. So it's actually working okay based on that. So based off current battery life, it's doing well. But then sometimes it will get 6 hours of battery life. It's very hit or miss. Over the past few days, it's seemingly been improved. So maybe it's done doing whatever it was doing in the background and it's back to normal. But for a while, it was a little bit bad at first, and then it got better. So I know some people were reporting that battery was bad, but the vast majority have said that battery is much improved with iOS 14.4, to the point where they say it's the best version of 14.4 by far. In fact, I took all of those comments in the YouTube community poll and went through every one of them, and there were hundreds, went through every one of them that mentioned battery, and then figured out who said it was good and bad. And out of everyone, 71% of you said it was the same or better than 14.3. Most said better. Only 29% of you were having issues. Now, I would give it a few days, like I said with the iPad, but in general, it's been really good for me. Now, before I look at my battery life, I wanted to cover battery health because a lot of people said battery health went down, and it can go down. It does continually go down just by the nature of batteries themselves. All batteries wear out, whether that be an iPhone or an Android phone, for example. They do degrade. iPhone just shows that to you, and it will go down a few percent over months usually. Now, as the battery ages, that number can accelerate as far as how fast it goes down, and then it will sort of level out and stop. But on my iPhone 12 Pro Max, since it's only a few months old, well, we're at 100%. I expect this to go down to about 99%, probably in a few more months or so, but I regularly charge this, put it on the charger at night, and take it off in the morning. And then when I'm driving, I wirelessly charge it as well. So generally, 80% after 2 years is normal. When you update, it's just checking that battery capacity again. It's not degrading the battery. So over the last 10 days, if we take a look at yesterday, you'll see it didn't do so great. 2 hours and 47 minutes of screen on time, 4 hours and 35 minutes of screen off time, and I used 50% of my battery. However, if we look at the day before, 2 hours and 51 minutes of screen on time, 3 hours and 27 minutes of screen off time. That means I'm getting about 9 or 10 hours of screen on time. That's completely normal for the 12 Pro Max. You can get as much as about 12 hours if you were to take it off the battery and leave it. But again, that depends on what you're doing. So if you're using YouTube, for example, or some things like Twitter seem to use a lot of power sometimes, and then a personal hotspot will use a lot too. So depending on what you're doing is going to make a difference. But in general, I've had no complaints with it. It seems to be great. By the end of the day, I have 50% left. And what that means is I used the phone from, say, 9 a.m. until 3 a.m. one day, and I had 50% left, about 52%. So no issues there. I'm pretty happy with it, and I can't complain. I know some people don't have the exact same experience, and some people's batteries are degrading, but in general, it seems to be improved for, well, at least 71% of you. Now that leads me to the next version of iOS. Now, whether or not there's a small version, iOS 14.4.1, for example, to fix the green tint issue is hard to say. I hope there's something like that, but I wouldn't expect it necessarily this coming week. However, Apple has said one thing, that in the next major version, so iOS 14.5, we can expect the privacy feature to finally be active. And what I mean by that is the Facebook privacy feature. Basically what it does is when Facebook tries to track across different, say, platforms you're using, maybe you're on Facebook on Safari and it wants to track what website you're going to, what you're looking at, Apple will block that. And Facebook has made a big deal about this, but it will allow you to know what's trying to use your information and give you control as to whether or not you're going to allow that. I think most people given the choice would say, no, don't track me where I'm going. So that's why they're putting up such a big fuss about it, but different apps will present that information to you and give you a little pop-up, and then you can say no, it looks like this, and then you can just say no, opt out, and you're good to go. So we know that that's coming out with 14.5 or whatever the next major version is according to Apple. So look forward to it in that particular update. And that leads me to 14.5 beta 1, I would expect as soon as this week. Usually when they release an update like iOS 14.4, the next day sometimes, or even the same day, they'll release the next beta. But since we haven't seen that, I would expect it early this coming week. And of course, as soon as that comes out, I'll let you know. Now, before we take a look at the community poll, that leads me to, should you install iOS 14.4? Well, if you haven't already, just based off those security fixes alone, I would say absolutely. Based off the performance, the battery life, there are still bugs. No version is perfect. No version has ever been perfect. I think maybe iOS 6 versions were probably one of the better ones, but even 13.7, 13 was the worst of many different versions, and 13.7 sort of got it right, but battery life seems to be back up to what that was anyway, and for some people even better. So at this point, I don't think there's really a reason not to install it, but of course that's up to you. Now, before I go into the YouTube community poll and take a look at some of the comments as well, here are the statistics taken from those comments about how many times people mention the word battery or lag or heat, for example. And then here are all the different devices that people are using as well. And tons of people are still using the iPhone 11, which is a great device. I did a video about that yesterday, so I still think that's great. And I think it's what most people probably buy these days if they're looking for a reasonably priced new phone. Other than that, the iPhone 12 Pro Max was the next used one. So that's pretty interesting to see the split there. But either way, let's go ahead and take a look at the poll. So we'll go into my YouTube folder and go to YouTube. And as you can see, the poll went live about a day ago and has 33,000 votes. So I really appreciate how many people voted. It's great to have that much interaction, as well as 696 comments, which means we get a lot of information and really get a good understanding of how this update really is. And so 59% of you said that it's great, 4% said that it's terrible, 13% said okay but some bugs, 16% didn't update yet or are on 14.3 or older, and 9% are using Android. And now some people are saying, why do you include Android? And I've mentioned this before, and that's because I cover Android updates as well as Android phones as well. So why not include them, just to sort of get an idea of how many people are actually using devices. And you'll see there's 696 comments, which is pretty incredible. And as you can see here, the first person thinks I need another option. There's a need for an option of nothing special. I don't see anything different. I know it's mostly just a patch against a security problem. And while it is a patch against security, like I mentioned, there are a bunch of fixes and updates as well. However, you're not going to see any major changes until iOS 15, which will be shown for the first time usually at the Worldwide Developer Conference, or WWDC, which we usually have in June. So if they keep what they've been doing for years, we'll have it in June, whether that be in person or most likely virtual. But WWDC 2021 should be expected in June, where they'll show off iOS 15 and whatever comes with that. So as we get closer to that, you're going to see less and less new features. But there are features and software bug fixes and things like that. So I think it's quite a bit of changes for something this late in the game, quite honestly. So let's go ahead and sort this, and then we'll take a look at some of these comments here. Bins Gaming says, the update is great on my iPhone 10, smooth like brand new. Also, battery life is great. Standby time is way great. And that's one thing I forgot to mention earlier is battery standby time. Those that aren't charging at night, for example, we're losing upwards of 10% of battery. Now it's down to about 4%, or back to normal of what it should be if you're not charging it at night, or you're just setting it down during the day. So it should have much better standby time, but give it a couple days to finish doing its background processes, because there could be a lot going on there that will drain it. But generally, I'll plug mine in at night because it likes to do all the backups and things then, and that way I don't have to worry about the battery in the morning. But whatever you do, it should be better. CCondi1 said 12 Pro Max, way better than 14.3, but some apps crash more frequently on 14.4. Lag when swiping is still there, but overall it is smoother. The battery seems to be about the same, a tiny bit better. Using an iPhone 11 Pro Max, 14.4 is great. No bugs faced till now, and battery is also great. No issues of lag either. Overall, a great update. Love your videos. Thank you. Rico says, my battery easily drains. I'm on iOS 14.4. Now, how to fix this? I would say if it's quickly draining now, it's probably doing a bunch of background information, or background updates rather, whether that be indexing or something else. Check for different apps or just try a reboot, but generally it should be better. So here's someone that has worse battery. Susan says, I have an iPhone 11 and the battery seems to be draining quicker than normal to me, but it is only a couple of days since it came out. The next person said, or Cruel West says, iPhone 11, so same phone, 100% battery. I'm happy with iOS 14.4. My battery is great, and I have no lag or issues. So you can see you can have the same device and have different sort of experiences depending on what apps you're using and how you're using it. Owen says, I'm using an iPhone SE 2nd gen, and it's great. Trina Griffith says, I'm using an iPhone 11. It's been great. No complaints. Plus, I've seen an improvement in my battery life since turning off the unnecessary things that drain the battery. iPhone 8 Plus, iOS 14.4 is amazing. No bugs, but I do feel a very small amount of lag when swiping on the home screen. But I also have been using my new M1 MacBook Pro now, so maybe I forgot how it felt. And I think what you mean by that is the M1s are so fast that it's incredible that everything else sort of feels slow, and that's definitely true. It says, for everyone who is unsure of updating, you should. I think iOS 14.4 is the best so far. Milo says, iPhone 12, everything is in order. MC Production says, battery life has been so much better on iOS 14.4 on my iPhone 8 Plus. With 87% battery health. Josh Jaco says, iPhone 12 Pro here and my connectivity is greatly improved. 5G is much better. The battery seems better as well. I easily get an entire 12-hour day out of mine. Omar Ferguson said, my battery life is improved on my 12 a little. I'm happy about that. Primal Bird said, no issues for me. Performance is good. Battery is great. 11 Pro Max. Jim Jam John said, I'm going to keep putting okay but some bugs until the green tint under 90% screen brightness when viewing black colors is fixed. It's horrible and makes me feel like I'm not using an OLED. So we'll read a few more here. Juan Espinoza says, iOS 14.4, been good on my iPhone 11. No problems. Battery life is good. Can't wait to see what Apple does next with iOS 14.5 or any other number they choose next. Thomas Van Gorkum says, it's performing great on my iPhone XS and my iPad 5th generation. And then finally, Braden says, it's been great for me on my iPhone 12. There's no stutter and battery life is better than it's been in a while. I'll read one more. Abdullah said, on iPhone 14.4, on iPhone 10, and it's pretty stable, but occasional stutters. Everything still opens fast, and battery life is about the same. And so that's it for iOS 14.4. Tons of comments, so I really appreciate it. I love the interaction, and I like to see how this is actually doing. The more information we have, the more we can understand it. So I'm looking forward to the next version, iOS 14.5 Beta 1, I think, but we'll have to wait and see. And then, of course, the overall experience seems to be getting better. Hopefully one day Apple will get it to where it's super stable every version, but no software is perfect. But either way, I'm looking forward to it. Let me know what you think you want to see maybe in the next iOS update other than the bug fixes, or what would you want to see in iOS 15? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.